I'm absolutely delighted to have you here and want to start by asking you to speak more about the fact that you did a PhD in neuroscience, but it's your love of metabolic health that has taken your interest. So welcome, Brian. I'm absolutely delighted to have you here.
Delighted to be here, Rebecca. Really delighted. Yeah, like great to be talking about metabolic health as well. I don't often get asked this question. I think subconsciously I actually probably mentioned that to get asked.
Oh, but I was so excited when you mentioned it because I'm so interested in metabolic health, but also neuroscience. And I can't wait to hear like the journey that kind of tied them together, but also how you transitioned from neuroscience to metabolic health. Like what happened?
God, what did happen? What brought me there? I know one of my core values, it's my most important value is energy. The energy we have is the energy we can give, and it's so much success in life, whether it's business success, personal success, relationship success, comes down to the energy that you have. And the shift in perspective I had when I found recovery, I just had this burning curiosity and energy and zest for life. And I suppose I'm going there because I think that's when I think of metabolic health, it's about energy. Like metabolic health is about your mitochondria creating energy, ATP, from glucose, for using oxygen, and the health and the efficiency of those molecules to create energy. And I don't exactly know what happened to me because I wouldn't have been in great health when I had that shift in perspective and I had that energy. So I think there's emotional energy, there's spiritual energies, there's different forms of energy. And I remember hearing an example one time, like if you had a love-sick teenager who his girlfriend broke up with him and he can barely move off his bed and he just can't get up, and all of a sudden the girlfriend rings back and said, I made a mistake, I love you. He'll jump back up off the bed, he'll be full of energy, you know? So what is that energy? But I think the reason I got into metabolic health was because exercise and nutrition just became a massive, massive thing in my new life, in my recovery. I eat clean, I eat healthy, and I move. And when I think of metabolic health, that's the core component of it. So it sort of sent me down a rabbit hole listening to the podcast. I was thinking about the idea of doing another PhD in metabolic health, and then I quickly banished that idea because that is just madness. So I'm sticking to the more peripheral stuff. But I'd read up on articles and I'd follow the likes of Peter Attia and even just looking after my own, like if you think of, like psychology is great. I love psychology. I love neuroscience. But I think I'm more aligned to the harder sciences and not so much physics or anything like that, but more the biological sciences and looking at cardiovascular health, looking at diabetes, looking at insulin sensitivity. There's real, very objective metrics that you can look at. And that's what I really enjoy about it, I think, as well.
That's nice to know you're hardwired to look at like the physical side of things and the concrete stuff, because neuroscience, again, it's harder to measure. There's different markers. And that's interesting you say as well, because you're all talking about going from when you addicted to heroin, probably not having like totally different energy, and then going to somebody that's, recovered and you're trying to get as much energy back as possible. And you're thinking about things like, okay, how is this going to happen? It's going to happen through me balancing my blood sugars. It's going to happen through, as you said, like the movement, the light, all them things. Because even though addiction is massively a mental process and coming out of it and recovery is, you have to marry that with that metabolic side of things. Otherwise, you're actually not recovered.
Yeah. That's it. And I think like there definitely wasn't a thought process around that at the very start. Paradoxically, I went down a very spiritual route, not in a religious way at all, more spiritual, just like presence and meditation and breath work and feeling in touch with nature and stuff like that. But again, these things give you energy. Like you don't have to look at, you can't only look at what gives you energy, what takes away your energy. And it's negative relationships, it's the busyness of life, it's city life, it's just blah, like,
very interesting what you just hit on there, because we're looking at metabolic health and optimizing that, but we forget, even if you're doing the cold exposure, the diet, you're doing everything, you have the continuous glucose monitor on, your diet, blah, blah, blah. If you're not looking at the energy drainers, all that good work isn't as optimal as it could be. So you're talking about your relationships, your screen time, your sleep, all that. That's taken away from all the great things you could be doing. I think that's just such a great one to explore, because a lot of people are like, well, I'm eating really well.
Yeah.
But are you absorbing the nutrients properly?
That's it. And I think people are often looking for the magic wand. And I suppose people would look at my journey and say, right, he was in the depths of heroin addiction and now he seems to have great energy. He's gone and done a PhD and doing certain things. And they're saying, what's the trick? What do you do? And if you want to cut the head off it, it's sleep well, eat well, and move. And I think, like, I always tell people, like, I didn't have an addiction problem per se. It was a symptom of an underlying problem, which was trauma, anxiety, and panic attacks. And people often, you hear people saying exercise is great for anxiety. And that's one way of looking at it. But I think it's the opposite of that in a way. It's when you don't exercise, it can cause anxiety because we evolved to move, forage, and hunt. So it's a sedentary lifestyle that sort of can create anxiety, depression, and other factors in people's lives.
That's very interesting to pause on when you flip the script of, like, exercise isn't this, negotiable thing. We're totally designed for exercise. And when you take something we're designed for out of the equation, which is a sedentary lifestyle, when you give us sedentary lifestyle, that's what creates, as you said, the energy imbalances, the mood disorders. And that's, like, amazing to reflect on when you can understand that, and how then the rationale for movement is very different in your mind. Therefore, the behaviours are going to be different because you believe, I have to do this. This is part of my day.
Yeah, and I think what we have to get away from as well, it's very hard in today's world with Instagram and all these different things. But for me, exercise is not about looking good. It's about feeling good.
I'm telling you,
feeling good.
When you get past your 20s as well, and you've been doing it for aesthetic reasons, now I'm in the gym 99% for mental health. I'm in it for the endorphins. I'm in it for all the mental aspect. The physical is a byproduct, great. Like you're going to be
nice bonus.
Yeah, nice bonus. It's all about the mental side of it. And like you said, we are made for that exertion every day. It's a very dangerous territory when you're in that sedentary life, and how that impacts your mood.
Yeah, and you get those benefits as well. And, like, from a neuroscientist scientific perspective, like, I was really, really obsessed at how exercise made me feel so good. And I says, there's a runner's high. He says, is there something else?
Yeah.
And I followed the work of Rhonda Patrick. Do you ever follow any of her work? She's brilliant, she is. And she comes across this, she didn't discover it actually, she sort of talks about it in a more lay way. But there's a pathway within the brain that not only when we exercise, it releases serotonin and helps us to fight stress in a very normative way, a healthy way. And it gets rid of toxins in the brain and gives us these neuroprotective factors as well, especially if you do high intensity exercise. Yeah. So there's loads of things within that pathway and loads of biological reasons that exercise is ridiculously beneficial to us.
It's amazing as well. I looked at studies lately. So I have clients in peri and postmenopause. And when you look at when they exert themselves a certain way, specific times per week, and it's heavier lifting, they're getting their heart rate up to a certain level, and all the other markers, how much that positively impacts their brain fog symptoms.
Yeah.
And when you just pause on that and think about that, like, we're approaching it so differently in modern society, where people, if you're above 50, a lot of people are just like doing gentle walking and low impact stuff, but it's showing the benefit of having to raise your heart rate and do things slightly differently. So it's interesting when you do look at, like, what's the most optimal way for your age as well. It's probably opposite to what we think.
Yeah, it's and it's apt for me at the moment as well, because I think the age specific stuff, like I'm sitting here with a bit of a knee niggle and what's a tendinopathy or something.
Oh yeah,
at the moment.
Niggling.
Yeah, but it was interesting. I'm coming to Swords today, and it says, "No, I'll come over. I'll miss the traffic. I'm in Gym Plus. So I was able to go to Gym Plus over in Swords, which was great. In the lovely sauna and ice bath and all over there." But it was brilliant because it's even though you're getting to a certain age, like, it's just important to factor in, and I think that's really important, like age as well. Like, longevity is one of the biggest reasons why you exercise as well. Yeah. Like, I love this idea of people talk about the lifespan and longevity, whereas I think it was Peter Attia phrased this beautifully. He says, we're not living longer, we're dying longer with the lifespan. Isn't it brilliant?
That is very good.
Very powerful.
What we actually just touched on before this off air, we were talking about, lots of people now, my friends' parents are passing away, and we're kind of looking at the perspective of a lot of them are at peace with that, because they were like, okay, if I prolong this, the quality of life declines.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting concept to think about, like very morbid and hard to reflect on, but also exactly like you said there, do we want to be dying for longer?
This is it, and it's not about the lifespan, it's about the health span. I want to be climbing mountains when I'm 70 and 80. I love skiing. I want to be skiing when I'm 80 years of age. And we talked about this before air as well, actually. We said, like, is that a little bit delusional? No, that's what I believe.
Yeah.
And the belief will drive that.
Completely. I'm the same. Skiing's one of my favourite things to do. And I'm already thinking, how am I going to be bringing my grandkids skiing?
Yeah. I love that.
How am I going to get to that? And if you think about the same with diving, love diving. How am I going to be, as a grandparent, bringing grandkids diving?
And the reason is, like, our muscles atrophy. I think they atrophy like 10% a decade after the age of 40. So
yeah,
that's scary. So you've got to focus on training in terms of your age, where you're at, and obviously navigating injuries and stuff like that as well. But what do you want to do in 20, 30, 40 years?
Yeah.
Because you need to put that in the bank now.
And what's so interesting about that, just when you talk about our decline in our lean muscle mass as we get older, for women, and I'm just speaking because I just mainly work with women, when that declines, we're less, insulin sensitive.
Yeah.
So that makes a massive difference. A lot of women are aging, but not lifting weight or building, muscle slowly. So that's going to massively impact our weight because insulin sensitivity is so connected to that. But a lot of people don't understand how, I suppose, today's society, as I said, it's very different to how we think we should exercise. Like, do a bit of gentle yoga, that'll get us through it. So we have to be looking at them things as well in terms of your metabolic health, of like, how am I going to increase my insulin sensitivity as well? It's a funny one that I think we should be thinking a little bit more about.
Yeah, we do need to be thinking a little bit more about it. And I think there's a challenge here for people, because you want to get people into exercise. And if you tell them all of a sudden you really need to be optimally training 10 hours a week, they're like not going to go there. And one of my biggest tips for people is baby steps. Start small. Start with gentle yoga. Start with a walk.
Yeah.
But we really do have to build it up. And it's, what are you looking for? Are you looking for optimal health? Are you looking just to be a little bit healthier?
Yeah.
But the reality is, like, if you want to be climbing mountains and doing things, even lifting your grandkids up in the air when you're 80 years of age, you're going to have to be thinking, what do I have to do now to be able to do that in the future? And I think strength-based training is really, really important. And if you look at the biggest markers of longevity or predictors of longevity, it's a high VO2 max, which is basically your ability to get oxygen in and out of your body, which is all related to metabolic health, and strength of muscles. And that's all related to insulin sensitivity as well. Like, your muscle mass, your lean muscle mass is really, really important. So you've got to, it's like we save for the future. We have pensions, so we have money in the future.
Yeah.
What's more important, money in the future or your health in the future? We need to save our health and bank it now.
What are you putting in the bank? Like, that's so interesting. What's compounding when you think of it like that? And that whole concept of, start slow. I have clients that are just doing twice a week, 15-minute YouTube, body weight, little circuit. Literally as simple as that, because their goal is to eventually, maybe in a few months or years, get into a gym and be able to do a 30-minute weightlifting session. Yeah. But you're transitioning towards that step by step, brick by brick. Yeah. And that's what to remember. If you're the person that can solidly build the foundation brick by brick rather than go all or nothing. And I think that's the aim of society today, is to move away from the all or nothing. Understand the delayed gratification.
So important.
Rewire the mind so that actually I'm not looking for the quick fix. I'm looking for slow and steady wins the race. And I think I will die on that hill, because there's so much people, I was totally all or nothing person. Like, I would be either eating crap all the time or I'm intermittent fasting and eating 100% on point. There's no grey area.
Yeah.
And it's like, I had to learn that skill.
Moderation wasn't a thing.
Not a thing. So it's like learning. How do you become that person that can value 80-20? Slow and steady. If I go off track, nothing's linear. It's interesting. Metabolic health can only become better if you mentally go back to rewiring what you believe is true.
Yeah, it really, so much comes from the mind. It really, really does. And something that I think I have internalized, and it really helps me on that journey, it's something that I changed the narrative in my head, is making discomfort a friend. And I think what I found with my addiction, and most people are shocked, they ask me, have I any regrets about my addiction? And obviously I would have liked to change the harm I caused my family and stuff like that. But I wouldn't take it back. I wouldn't change it, because it's gifted me so much. But the biggest lesson I got was, it was such a great teacher. And what I found in recovery is that you don't learn anything from success. You learn through challenges and discomfort. Like, you jump into an ice bath. it's uncomfortable. You train, like, to get your muscles stronger and bigger, you need to put them through discomfort. To learn something mentally, you need to study and learn. It's mental friction. And we need to make discomfort our friends. And you might be thinking, I don't want to go to the gym. Of course you don't want to go to the gym because it's actually uncomfortable and it's painful. But if you persevere and take those baby steps and change over time and try to internalize that the gains are in the discomfort.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, all of a sudden you start enjoying discomfort. You enjoy the gym and stuff like that.
That's the weirdest thing, right? So I've never had a problem getting into the gym 6 or 7 days a week because probably 10 years ago, I've complete positive association with it. So even in there, my teeth are grimacing. I'm working myself into the ground some days. Like, I'm really pushing myself to another level. But that to me is like, I love that every day. I'm really looking forward to it. I don't see the pain aspect. So it's funny, when you have the deep rationale and it really aligns with your core values, it's no longer like, oh wow, I have to get myself into the gym.
Yeah, the friction goes.
The friction goes.
Yeah, but paradoxically, like, you don't enjoy the pain, but you enjoy going to the gym. It's very paradoxical, actually.
It is.
Or whatever it is for you. It could be walking, it could be running, but it doesn't have to be in the gym. It could be whatever.
Pickleball.
Yeah,
You know, it's like the associations you have with it. And I think it then goes back to like the belief of the person you are, the label you've put on yourself. Like, are you a person that regularly goes to the gym? You know, that I think, and as we said earlier on, the belief systems is what really, and you gave a really good quote. What was it about the thermostat?
Oh, that belief is the thermostat that regulates your success in life.
Yeah, that's unreal.
Yeah, it's class.
Unreal. And it really is. Like, no matter how much success you have to think about what you believe consciously and subconsciously to have got to that point. Yeah. Like, I remember when I started posting on social media, I was a horse with blinkers on. I don't even know what people were saying about me, or, you know, people probably taking the piss out of me. But I was so focused on an end goal, and the belief I had was, I was like, my social media is going to fucking blow up. That was all I thought. Blinkers, road ahead, didn't hear any of the background noise. Imagine you could do that with other behaviours. And I really struggled to actually apply that to other behaviours. It's funny, I don't know what happened in my mind to get to that point. Yeah. To get like completely moving forward. Nothing was like, there was 10,000 obstacles and I was just like kicking them out of the way.
It's funny, that goes along with a really fundamental belief I have in my life as well, like, because that's kind of delusional if you think about it. Oh,
totally, it was delusional. I was just like a housewife living at home with no job, with my 1-year-olds.
Yeah. And there's a thing, I always say, there's a thin line between self-belief and self-delusion, and we need to cross it. Okay, I cross it a lot. Like, when I went back to college, like, I couldn't write. I've never wrote anything in my life, but I had this weird delusional belief that I could go to college and kick ass. I don't know why I had that, but that was the thermostat that regulated my success in college then.
Funny you said that. So my dad failed his leaving cert, right? Yeah. And then he said to everyone, I'm going to become a doctor, right? And everyone was like dead, laughing at him, like, you're delusional. Went off the oil rigs, came back, did the leaving cert. Now he just retired as a consultant psychiatrist. Amazing. Went and did medicine, went and did psychiatry. But again, he was totally one-track mind. Again, don't know where the belief he got from it. Never did well in school. There was nothing to point that he could be a doctor whatsoever. There was nothing in his upbringing that his parents instilled in him, from what I can hear, that they instilled a lot of self-belief in him or encouragement. So it's funny, like, the mind is so powerful when you see the goal. You can see and visualize the goal.
Yeah, it really is. And it boggles my mind, like, the more and more I see examples of this. Like, if you can think it, it can happen.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's it. And I think, like, that's a huge part because of the lack of self-belief of a lot of people. They can't think it or visualize it. And they're like, can't visualize.
I think it really comes back to this framing thing as well. Like, that thing, imposter syndrome as well. It's another one of those phrases that I think about, like, if you're not feeling like an imposter, it means you're not pushing hard enough. But imposter syndrome is good. It means you're going in the right direction. So we've got to reframe these things, these things that are ingrained in our conditioning and ingrained in society. We've got to fight against those, you know.
I heard a really interesting clip the other day. You know Ilona Maher? She's the American rugby player. I
don't actually.
And she became really famous because she's a fucking unbelievable athlete, but also because she, like, posted the Olympics on social media and everyone got to know her personality, which is hilarious. She's a really good laugh. And somebody interviewed her and said, you know, like, basically saying, oh, how do you get through imposter syndrome? And she was like, oh, I don't actually have that. I don't in any way relate to that whatsoever. And the woman was like, oh, but how are you not, like, feeling doubt of yourself? And she was like, oh, because I've put in so much work, I completely feel I deserve this. So you actually transcend to a point where you're like, oh, actually, this is my identity. I completely believe in myself. Initially, she may have felt like, oh my God, I'm like playing rugby in front of millions of people. But now total belief. Like, and it's just power of the mind. It was amazing to watch her because she spoke and you could see in her face, she was totally telling the truth. She was just like,
check that out. Yeah, I love stuff like that.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. She's become the identity.
She has completely become
she wanted to be.
And even I can imagine being in the same room with her energy would be so uplifting because that total self-belief, that total grit and determination and the complete certainty of she's in the right place at the right time because she put in all the reps. And that's another part of self-belief. Of course, self-belief is going to be difficult if you're not doing the behaviours that align with that person you want to become.
Yeah. And that's fundamental as well. It's the belief I have is like you're building a wall of evidence, a wall of confidence. Like if you haven't got self-belief, it's very arbitrary, very hard to grab. How do you build self-belief?
Yes.
You look at the evidence, build that wall, and over time you can see it in a more concrete way.
And I think when you look at the person as well, say if someone's struggling with like low energy, low mood, and we look at them, how do they start? Like for someone that's really struggling and even they have so much brain fog, they're like, how do I put one step in front of the other? And I'm sure, like myself, you had that point where you were like, I always described it as like, I felt trapped in a dark room and I was like, oh, I can't get out of the room. I always think like that. For that person, I'm always thinking about that person. What do they pay attention to? How do they get out of that dark room where they're like, my diet's shit, my mood is shit, my sleep is shit? Because they always go together. Like it's all a...
Yeah. It's really, and I'll come at this from an angle of addiction and then bring it into sort of just normal life. But like, there's a book out there. It's a Gabor Mate book, In the Realm of Hungry.
Oh, we love Gabor.
We love Gabor.
Jesus, he's great.
In the realm of hungry ghosts, and the hungry ghost in addiction is the addict that's chasing to eat something or they're thirsty. But
such an amazing visualization to think of actually the hungry ghost.
The hungry ghost, but they can never fulfill themselves.
Empty.
They can never quench that thirst no matter how much they get. It doesn't exist. It's the reason why chasing the dragon is called chasing the dragon. The dragon is make-believe. You will never get that first hit again. So, but in the realm of hungry ghosts, when you were in addiction, you were in a different realm. And people often talk about people in addiction and say, why are they doing that? Why don't they just change? And I'm like, no, you've never been in that realm.
No, yeah.
If you've been in that realm, you are in the dark room. You can't see reality. You can't see the normal world, for whatever, in inverted commas, whatever the hell normal is. But you can't see outside of that box that you're in.
Yeah.
And I think what we have to do is we need to step outside of that. There's a lovely line in addiction circles. It's connection, or sobriety is not the opposite of connection. Addiction is. It's a beautiful line, but I actually think the real opposite of addiction is awareness. It's stepping out of the realm. And all of a sudden, when you become aware, and my shift in perspective, whatever the hell happened, it was like I woke up and I says, what the hell have I been doing? I seen the light. It was like I was kicked out of that dark room and I was looking outside of the room and the bright lights saying, what the hell? What was I in there for all of them years?
I just actually want to pause on that for a second. Say if somebody's in the cage, I always think it's a mental cage. I could tomorrow, even though I've done years of therapy and work on myself, I could go into that mental cage tomorrow, right? Because something might trigger me into it, okay? But in that mental cage, I don't see the way out of the cage. I don't have the key. But everyone can find the key. You found the key. Yeah. It's just, there might be multiple ways you find the key. And it's just about searching for it. But like that mental prison, I think we all go through it. And you heard about it a lot, the bust, when a load of like rich people lost all their money, right? They were in a mental cage. And they couldn't see how to ever get that money back and provide for their family. If we look at that example. Yeah. There's always a way. There's always some side step you can do. And I think that's just, you put it so well. Like you got out of the room and you could see the solutions. Yeah. But you were dark when you were in the room. You couldn't see any solution. Yeah, and I think it's a lovely metaphor to carry through, because some people might be asking, well, how do I get out of the bloody room? Like I didn't get that lucky break. I didn't get kicked outside of that room. Yeah. And I'm so grateful that whatever the hell happened to me, and I wish I could put it in a bottle and give it to people. But the reality is that most people that get outside of the room, they get out slowly, they get out over time. You're crawling out. And sometimes you want to go back in there even though it's dark, because that's all you know, when your identity is grounded in that. But this is where really stepping past your fears really come into it. Like the best things in life are often on the other side of fear. Yeah. And stepping out of that dark room, even though it's dark and horrible, if you're going into something different, it can be really challenging. Yeah. And also, inevitably it's going to be highly uncomfortable. When you
Yeah.
get out of that room, you're going to feel disgusting
Yeah.
because it's unfamiliar.
Yeah.
You know, we want the familiar hell. We always gravitate towards the familiar hell. So when you get out of that room, it's like preempting, this is going to be highly uncomfortable. I have to lean into that emotion. And that's something a lot of people have ran away from their entire life.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, we've just been trying to avoid getting to that point where we have to process that emotion.
Yeah. And I think for people looking for sort of a tangible way of doing that, like I think what's really fundamentally important, we've talked so much about beliefs, and it really taps into like negative self-talk as well. Like, what are the beliefs and what is the narrative, your internal narrative that's keeping you in that room? Is it, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not attractive enough, I'm not lucky enough, everyone else has it better, look at the start they got in life. But the reality is we're all given a set of ingredients in life. Some people ingredients are not very good. But if that's the hand you've been dealt, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
So sort of acceptance is key. Accept reality, but then step into it. What is the narrative? What are the beliefs hold me back? And that can be the starting point of trying to get yourself out of that mental prison.
Oh, that's so nicely put. And that's it. Like, I think it's very hard to even articulate the mental prison, how it actually feels. And I felt it very briefly a few weeks ago. That kind of trapped feeling, pit of your stomach. And it just brought me back to people are feeling that continuously on a day-to-day basis. So you see on social media and somebody's giving advice and tips to do, but people can't even get outside in the morning. And it's just important, like probably everyone will get to a chapter of their life where they feel like that. It might be from grief, it might be from a job loss, you know, whatever it may be. But we'll all get to that point where you're not able to see outside and you're just stuck. And I think like when we acknowledge that and know that like it's nearly dealt to everyone at some point, it's much easier to process. Life isn't going to be linear. Most like we just don't have it like that. Even the people that were dealt a great hand, and I have
challenges too. Yeah,
exactly. Even I've seen growing up, I always used to think, wow, they're from such a stable family. Both their parents are so sensible. They have, you know, they learned how to regulate. They could co-regulate with their family members. That's amazing. And I thought. And as I watched them grow up and they're my friends, they have big problems too. You know, they don't have all the answers. Even in terms of when we look at trauma and how we could all go through the same event, but we'd all come out the other end completely differently. It's like really understanding that's important, and the triggers that you get to a point and you're like, wow, I don't understand why I'm reacting to this situation like this. So you have to have that self-awareness of your, you know, the past years in your life to really get to that point. And you obviously did the work. You understood why heroin was appealing to you.
Yeah.
You know, like you had that awareness. It wasn't like, oh, I'm addicted to heroin because of heroin.
Yeah. And that was the key, because people often ask me, do you ever want to go back? And I say, no, I don't want to go back. There is nothing appealing about it anymore, because I didn't fight heroin to be in recovery. I fought what was driving me to take heroin, which was trauma, anxiety, and panic attacks. The biggest success I've ever had in my life and will ever have in my life is changing my relationship with anxiety. Like, I love anxiety. It's a crazy thing to say. Like, I don't like the feelings of the chest getting tight. Like, but I kind of do in a weird way, because I now have the toolbox that I can just swat it away. And it's taken years to implement those tools. But the biggest tools is back to what we talked about at the start. It's exercise, food, and good metabolic health. It's those basics, getting the basics right. But obviously, if I'm going out and I'm doing a big talk in front of 1,000 people, I'm going to get anxious. I'm going to feel panicked. I even done an event at the Helix, there back in a couple of months ago. First time my ma was ever at a live talk, 1,000 people in the audience, being recorded for an RTE documentary, and I forgot my lines for the first time ever.
Stop.
Should have been the worst speaking event I'd ever done. It turned out to be my favourite. And the reason was, I had to go off stage now for a couple of minutes and come back, but the collective hug I got off the audience was something I will never, ever forget. The support. It was like that vulnerability opened up a space for the audience to support me. And it's been one of the favourite moments in my life ever. And I was like, yeah, I messed up on stage, but it's not even that big a deal. Yeah, I got anxious. All of them things came into it. But like, it's just by being able to change my relationship with anxiety. I went out, I think the talk I done at Jerry's, out again in front, I know it was at Georgie Crawford's event, doing a talk in front of another 1,000 people live. But it was changing my relationship with anxiety and knowing I have a toolbox to regulate those emotions on that physical level. That was the key, because I changed my belief. My belief was I can't cope with anxiety. Consequences, take drugs. My belief is I enjoy anxiety. I've changed my relationship with it. Consequence of anxiety today, take out the toolbox, swat it away. Back to belief.
What's in your toolbox specifically? Because I always talk about how individual a toolbox is to get back into that rest and digest state, and how I think it's really interesting to hear someone else's, because everyone's combination is different.
Yeah, there's a very simple one for me, because we're back to objective science again. Like, I want to, and in terms of understanding this from a neuroscientific perspective, like if you think of the stress response or the anxiety response, it is your body readying itself for fight or flight. For the body to ready itself for fight or flight, it needs energy. For the body to need energy, the heart needs to pump blood around the body, the nutrients that will give you that energy. So the heart rate is the core component of the stress and anxiety response. So there's very little we can control in life, but we can control our heart rate through the diaphragm. So it's basically a very simple breathing exercise. I'll keep it very, very simple. Increase the exhale compared to the inhale, and best to keep it simple. So let's say breathe in for 4 seconds, breathe out for 6 seconds. And if you do that 10, 11 breaths, you will decrease your heart. It will center you. You will become more mindful. And that is the lever that I use. There's lots of different variations of that technique. I won't go into the depths of it right now, but there's different variations of that technique. But it comes down to changing your heart rate through a breathwork technique. But the most important thing is that I have the belief that I can do something that's going to help me to cope with anxiety. And again, back to the belief, that's really, really helping.
Yeah, that's class to hear that, because it's actually so simplistic. A lot of the tools I hear when I ask someone this, it's like understanding that a longer exhale is going to help me. Understanding that breath work is like the quickest way to slow the heart rate and to bring you back to, I suppose, being able to process easier. And then a lot of it isn't this like, even for metabolic health, it's not crazy tools and gadgets. Yes, it's interesting to wear a CGM monitor and see what's happening with your blood sugars. Yes, it's interesting to use different tools and ice baths and all that. But a lot of it goes back to the simplistic thing first. And then if you're into it, like myself and yourself, then you start looking at the gadgets and going more into it, but it doesn't take that. It takes the simple things first, like getting your exercise routine so you enjoy it. That could be like Qigong.
Yeah.
Anything. Simple stuff.
Yeah.
I love that you're on the same wavelength as like keeping everything as simplistic as possible. Because I think the words metabolic health, people are like, oh my God, like what? Even people must ask you, what is metabolic health? And it's, I'll ask you that.
What is metabolic health?
For you.
So for me, metabolic health is looking at, I suppose one way is looking at it is your energy. So it's looking at the efficiency of your body to utilize energy through glucose, food, which turns out the glucose or ketones, whatever which way, and using that energy. And obviously the efficiency then of the battery packs of the body to utilize that energy. That's the mitochondria. Yeah. So it's the efficiency of those cells what's really key. Yeah. But then there's so much nuance within that as well. Like, let's take fasting, for example. Like, when people fast, what's the benefit of fasting? And we know there's benefits for fasting, but one of the biggest benefits for fasting, it's called autophagy, is sort of when other cells eat the bad cells in the body, and it's called autophagy. But mitophagy is when the mitochondria eat weaker cells and create better cells as a result. So it increases the efficiency of the existing cells that are going to survive, and that can come through fasting. So intermittent fasting is a technique in my life. I usually don't eat till about 12 o'clock. That's my window. 12 till about 9 o'clock I'd eat. So about 15 hours of not eating. But it's like increasing that mitophagy. So you're increasing the efficiency of the production of energy within the body. And when I think of metabolic health, there's loads of different ways of talking about it, and there's different nuances around it, but that's the core of what I think about.
I actually had this conversation with my dad the other day, because he has like stage 4 cancer, and we were like, right, bit of fasting, because I've done fasting for so many years, every type from OMAD to 16-8 to I've done 3 and 4 day water fasts. Like,
I'm dying to do one of them.
Done it all, right? Yeah. I really understand it, but the literature isn't there for females. It's just not there. So it's quite subjective in the sense a lot of women do really well when they eat their first meal when they break their fast within 1 hour of waking, just in terms of hormone balance, etc.
Yeah.
Men's different gravy.
Yeah.
Testosterone optimization does really, really well with fasting.
Yeah. And the consistency, it's much easier to be consistent.
And a lot easier to be consistent because you
Yeah.
have, your 24-hour cycle, circadian health, bingo bango, simple, straightforward. Women, it's different. We have the infradian cycle, 30 days of fluctuations, 28 days, whatever you want to say. So it's really interesting. The literature around, and you always hear that when somebody has like cancer, they're thinking, okay, I'm going to do like maybe a supervised 10-day water fast. And they build up to that point because you need to understand, like you said, autophagy and all the other elements of how the cellular repair happens with fasting. So I'd love to hear from your perspective, when people do the longer fast, what happens in the body. Now, I just want to preface this by saying fasting will not suit a lot of people. I have a lot of clients who have chronic fatigue, and fasting is a stressor on the body. And it might be too much of a stressor for you to fare well with at all. I do not fast when I feel that I'm not ticking the boxes with nutrition, sleep. I know exactly how to break a fast. I know what to do at different stages of the fast. That's something that's really important. I don't think it should be recommended to anyone that doesn't know what they're doing and understanding what happens in the body. But yeah, from your perspective, how do you see it as beneficial and conducive and helpful for optimizing your metabolic health?
Yeah, so the first thing I would want to say there, Rebecca, is like, I think people have to listen to their own bodies. And when you think about techniques and stuff like that, like personalised medicine is coming in more now. And that's why I love CGMs, because it personalises it to you. And I think that's really important. And some days if I just start to feel hungry in the morning, there's something a little bit different, I'm actually going to have something. I'm not going to fight this and make my body feel worse as a result. So it's getting in tune with your body and getting in tune with yourself and having that awareness and that instinct around that as well. I think that's really, really important. And the second one, what was the question? Can you repeat the question?
Jeez, I never remember your questions. I think it was just about understand the benefits of it long term when you do it. But I really want to circle back in a moment to what you said about tuning into the body and listening to your body, because I think a lot of people cannot do that. They're too disconnected. So we'll circle back to that. But yeah, I suppose your thoughts on how beneficial it is and why should someone bother with fasting when a lot of people now are like saying fasting isn't a good thing to do, but people see it as just as the calorie deficit side of it.
Yeah, the calorie deficit side is huge for several reasons. And it's not about losing weight and back to aesthetics. The reason why we've got to fight the calorie, or fight it from a calorie perspective, is because we're living in a world that are tuned into our evolutionary wants of sugar and fats, because we didn't have this abundance of food for millions and millions of years, thousands of years. And all of a sudden we have the best food science, some of the best food scientists in the world being employed by mega corporations who are trying to hook us into foods. They just add sugar into foods now, not for taste, just to get us addictive, because it will hijack the reward systems of the brain and we will want more and we will consume more. Like what the capitalist culture wants is a society full of addicts. And when it comes to food and technology, it's the same. That's what they want. They want a society full of people that just want to consume. So one of the reasons why intermittent fasting works for me is because I'm no different than everybody else, and I love me food and I will want to eat more and more food because it's just so beautiful, because that's the way it's been designed. So it stops me from eating so much. But back to the personalised element of it as well, I feel better. My energy is higher, and I never eat before I do a talk, before I do a presentation. And it was funny, we were doing a TV documentary there last year, and a lot of the guys were looking at me and they were getting like pastries and donuts and all for lunch breaks and stuff. And I'd say no to them all and I think they thought it was for aesthetic reasons. I didn't want to eat sugary stuff for aesthetic reasons. I says, no, it is not that. My energy wanes because when you have a sugar high or you have simple carbs, you will have that glucose spike and then it will crash and you will be in low energy. And what they seen, because we were filming for a couple of months, they seen my energy. We were over in London one day and we did a 22-hour day where we were up in the morning. My energy was still high. I don't know how actually, but it was still high after 20 hours and I was still feeling good. But I was really careful about what I was putting into my body, and I fasted for a bit of that time as well. But that isn't the same for everybody. So we're back to that. You've got to tune into your own body of what works for you. Yeah. And that can take time, because sometimes you have to clear away the clutter before you can actually get in tune with that as well. Yeah. It's taken me years. I think I'm really getting in tune with it now, but it's taken me a bit of time.
And I think as well, you're hitting a good point. The dance of the dopamine rewards of food, right? And I experienced this for a long time where I became very reliant on food as a distraction throughout the day. So it actually came to a point where I was just grazing all day long. I wasn't even eating any meals. I was just grazing all day long as a distraction, and it became like a habitual behavior. And a lot of people are at the point where fasting might be a useful tool just to retrain your body to get used to even 3 to 4 hours between meals. That's how I started fasting. I just said, okay, I'm going to eat at these 3 meal times. And I was so hungry, like 2 hours after even a really balanced meal, because my body got used to having, continuous glucose spikes all day. And with that comes energy crashes, exactly like you said. And a lot of people are living in a world where they're on the continuum of being insulin resistant. So that means that all day, of course, you're going to be craving sugar because you don't have sustained energy from the way you're eating, the way you're sleeping, the way you are or are not exercising. So it's really interesting to look at that and look at every individual. If you are really insulin resistant, the fasting needs to be approached from a different angle. And you need to really understand the way to break it, for example. But also the person that has, their gut health is in a good place and they're actually ravenous all the time. Again, things need to be fixed before you can really delve into fasting properly. Otherwise, it's going to be a process where you're really energy depleted.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. I don't know where my body was in early recovery, but I could say no to heroin, I could say no to alcohol, I could say no to so many things that hook people in recovery, but I could not say no to food.
Interesting, yeah.
But I was on this like mad journey of really getting big into health, and I have to only laugh now. If I had my family here now to be saying like, what were you like I would literally have like, it's bonkers when I think of it, Rebecca, but I used to be making me dinner in early recovery and I'd have a big mound full of sprouts and broccoli and cauliflower and a big mound, all healthy food. It was like 2,000 calories a meal, even though it was healthy food. I was ravenous and eating so much. And I've never gotten into tune about what that was. And I really find it fascinating because I think addiction is like, in metaphorical terms, it's like a hole in your soul. There's something missing and you're trying to fill that hole in your soul, like whether it's rejection, abandonment, something, psychological needs not being met at some stage, and you're medicating yourself with the drug or the behaviour, whatever that is. But I felt like I really got in tune with that. But maybe my biological systems between ghrelin and leptin, those sort of hormones that feed into hunger and stuff like that, were a little bit off balance. And there's some really interesting work around Ozempic and stuff like that, where they're saying people that take Ozempic long term are no longer craving alcohol. Now, I definitely don't think it's a solution for that, because what's underneath the bonnet driving that addiction, if it's loneliness, disconnection, it's not going to cure that. But there's definitely a thing with food and addiction, and people are of course addicted to food. But over time, I just start eating smaller portions, more balanced diets, and I suppose mentally and emotionally I'm in a better place as well, because I'm doing the work. I don't like that term, but I do the work every day. Like I exercise, I eat well, I do breath work, I have good people around me, I try to have a stillness in my life as well. And I think I've just come into balance, but it's taken years. And I remember when me and my partner first got together, that'd be about 5 years ago, and she had a caramello and she took it out and she took 2 squares and put it back, and I thought I witnessed a miracle. I might as well have been looking at Moses walk or Jesus walking on water. I was like, what just happened? Couldn't understand it. And that was I think my family, there's a few ravenous people in my family over time. That's what we did. Be eating like.
Oh, be eating. I'm telling you, if a box of biscuits come into the house, they're gone within half an hour. Like, it's so interesting. And I remember that when I was young, seeing friends and they'd be like, I'll just have a square of it. And I'd be like, what?
Yeah.
Do you know when you... Yeah, it's just very... But then now, Mom said to me the other day, will you get that box of chocolates out of the house? I wouldn't even notice it anymore, which is the complete opposite to what I was like. So you can like go to moderation when you were all or nothing, or when your family the way you were brought up is like that. But it's so funny, them unicorns of people that just are just like very... that's, they're not overly addicted to food. Yeah. And I think that's like a massive part of things now. And that's why I do enjoy fasting at some points for shorter or longer fasts, because it gives me a better appreciation of food, and it for me helped my relationship with food. For other people, it's very damaging. Fasting, you can overfast, and if you already have disordered eating or eating disorders, it may not be a tool for you at all.
That's the big one, yeah. Any really bad relationships with food and eating disorders, it can be quite dangerous.
Yeah.
So you've got to say, right, does this work for me? And when you try it, is it working?
Mm-hmm.
I think something people have to do is like consider yourself a scientist doing little science experiments on yourself. That's what I've been doing all of the time, and I find what works for me. I found the little morning routines that work for me, the little tricks that work for me, and just change that over time. And I'm constantly monitoring things. Constantly monitoring.
I think that's the thing. You have to put on your hat where you're assessing yourself all the time, and you are a guinea pig. You're literally like, right, my whole life is dedicated to discovering, because every year something different will work for you and will not work for you anymore. Chapters will change. And you're continuously assessing. And it's like that blueprint that worked for you in your 20s doesn't work in 30s. We're optimizing all the time.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting to think of it like that and be like, okay, the way I ate in my 20s is very different to how I eat now. The way I exercise is very different. Since I had kids, I don't have the energy to be putting in 3 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Now I have maybe one hour if I'm lucky, a few days a week. So it's interesting to look at it. We're continuously, exactly like you said, optimizing, changing, assessing throughout your life. And then when you go back to as well, if something traumatic happened to you as you were growing up or now in your life, you need to then completely change your blueprint again.
Yeah.
Because your energy is different. All of these things are different. So like, I can't wait to talk to you about this, because everything changes. Once a big life event happens, everything goes out the window with how you process things and how you regulate and how the energy you have.
Yeah, massively so. And something even as much as last year for me, I felt I needed to clone myself last year just in terms of the business. I was just being pulled in every which direction, and I was too busy. And then all of a sudden I had the opportunity for this big TV documentary, so I had to do it. I had to say yes, and it was a good choice. But I worked so much, and I just knew I do an annual review every year in December, and I say, right, what worked, what didn't, what gave me energy, what took me energy away, what do I need to change for 2025? I don't really have to-do lists, I have not to-do lists, right? So this is what I'm not going to do for 2025. And the big theme, the overarching theme for me was pulling back. Now, if I didn't do that, and I got pulled in by the paradox of success, because you just get more opportunities and you do more and you're busy and you're overwhelmed, and the family and loved ones usually take the hit. Well, what would have happened? And I wouldn't have been balanced. I wouldn't have been regulated. So maybe I would have, rather than to have a drink to de-stress, maybe I would have started eating like a lunatic again. Yeah. Who knows where that's going to bring it? So you've got to sort of take stock of where you're at and change as a result of that, because it will leak out somewhere. There's
a theme as well running through what you said in terms of you've obviously found the sweet spot of being able to become into a regulated state regularly. And I think when it comes to behaviour change, beating addiction, any of that, that's a core component of you being able to get into that regulated state so you don't go into autopilot.
Yeah.
And that's such a huge part of this. And even you said there, like you're turning down things that aren't aligned with, your values or whatever. But also you're so tuned in to your gut instinct that you can actually say yes or no to things with conviction without having to second guess everything. And we talked about this before air, of learning how to tune into the gut instinct and how it's different for males and females, because females in terms of estrogen plays a role in our emotional processing. So women you hear more often say, just listen to your gut. But for men, sometimes it's not that easy, because men are like, you're supposed to be logical, you're supposed to be pro and con list. So how do you get to a point where you're in that space you're in now, where you're able to say, that's for me, that's not for me. You're not second guessing. You're listening to the body. You're looking, you're really understanding your values.
Yeah, there's a line I love. It's your heart will blind you, your mind will trick you, but you can always trust your instincts, because your gut will never lie.
Brian, I'm telling you, the quotes you're banging out today.
That's me own, actually.
Unreal. I'm writing them all down.
But that's and again, I don't like absolutes, because your gut can blind you and trick you sometimes as well, especially if you're disconnected. But I think back to the piece that you spoke about, like I think women are definitely much more in tune with their gut instinct. I think from an evolutionary perspective, they had to be. And I think men are more, can be, and generalising here, they're more ego-based, and especially young men, it's about impulsivity, risk-taking, ego, bigger, bolder, better, that kind of stuff, and can get you into trouble. And I think that can cut you off from your gut instinct, because if you're tapping into your gut instinct, you're not going to be bigger, bolder, better. From an evolutionary perspective, you needed people to take risks for the survival of the tribe. But now we're living in a different world. And my own perspective, when I found recovery, I had a realization, actually subconsciously, I leaned into mentors who are women, and I started connecting with a lot of women and learning lessons from women. I even much better relationship with my mum than my dad in recovery. I was just angled more towards women's wisdom, I think. But I think what it was is that nurturing, instinctive, intuitive kind of mode that was missing from my life, because over time I realised that I was ego-driven, ego-based. I couldn't admit to myself I had feelings, never mind acknowledging anxiety, feelings that would make me feel weak. So that was the core, a huge core of my addiction as well. I wouldn't sort of focus on that. And I completely, like drugs just completely cut you off in your emotional world. I had no instinct. My only instinct was to get heroin. I'd find money and I'd get heroin. That's about the only instinct I had. But like I was completely cut off by that. But over time, slowing down, I think you become more communicative with your gut instinct and your heart. And it's really listen to your heart, listen to your gut instinct, listening to those little subtle cues that are not really linguistic. They're more feelings, they're more a knowing, they're more of a nudge in a certain direction. And I think it takes a lot of time, and it's a skill.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's something I placed a lot of value on. And I think that's really key as well. You talk about the word values there. I would be a very values-driven person. Like I have about 12 or 13 values. My 3 core values, my energy, my health, and my relationships. And I protect them with my life. I really do. But I think one of my biggest realizations and one of the most powerful tools in my life is realizing that our values will guide us towards our true north, where our feelings can pull us off course.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not talking about gut intuition or instinct. They trump everything else most times. But I'm talking about feelings from negative situations and challenges. Like, I'll give you an example of that. You might value a relationship, honesty and integrity, but you feel like avoiding a difficult conversation because it's easier. So those feelings-based decisions can be easier and more alluring because it's a simpler choice to make. You might feel like having a bottle of wine or binging on TikTok for 3 hours because you're stressed. Feelings-based decision or values-based decision, go to the gym, go for a walk. So what do you value, and what are the actions and decisions you're making? Do they align with what you value, or do they align with easy choices?
I think that's really interesting. My therapist said to me before, and it just stuck in my mind, feelings are not fact.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, say if you've had some event in your life that triggers you into a place of feeling, anxious, low, whatever the mood may be, that feeling might not be an accurate reflection of what the current scenario is. It might just be pulling you back to the past feeling. So you're going to behave differently then. And I think that's really powerful to continuously say that to myself. Is this feeling fact or not? Most of the time it's not. Most of the time I'm reminded of a past event that this current event has mimicked. And I think once you really can delve into that, you're thinking, okay, now I can be a little bit more logical, and knowing gut instinct and your feelings can get kind of mashed up together sometimes. So sometimes you think you're going off your gut instinct, but a feeling is maybe deviating that, kind of like what you said.
Yeah.
It's a very, very interesting concept.
Because they speak the same language, They speak the same language,
They do.
Which isn't the language. It's a feeling and a knowing, and that's so you're reacting on your conditioning, and you're like, you don't know. You think it's instinctual. You think it's your gut instinct, but it's something that happened in the past that has a flavour of what's going on now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've thought about that a lot lately. Like I've had things that happened to me in January, which were very minor, but I felt highly dysregulated for days. And I'm pretty good. I know my toolkit, and I still felt, although I was able to get to a point in and out of rest and digest state throughout the day, I was still going back into fight or flight pretty quick. And when I had the thought, it really sparked off this, the racing heart and all the other common symptoms of when you're in that state. And I just thought, wow, like this isn't actually reflecting my reality at all now. This is just pulling me back to past events. Right now is just reminding me of what happened in the past. And then when you have that self-awareness, then of course you're going to be able to drop into the gut instinct better, because you're going to be saying, okay, I'm going to park that for a second. I know this is happening because of what previously happened. And I think when you have that awareness, you can begin to trust the gut better.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what's important for people to recognize, some people often think of self-awareness, being self-aware as a unidimensional kind of thing. But like, you think of self-aware, like someone might go to a yoga class or walk down the river and think they're so self-aware. But how self-aware are you when challenges arise, challenges from the past, thoughts from the past that are triggering? What's your level of self-awareness? But what I would say to people is don't beat yourself up for that. That's a learning opportunity in itself. So sometimes it's good to reflect, journal, whatever works for you. And then the next time the challenge comes around, you're more equipped to handle that situation. And that's building self-awareness. Self-awareness has layers, you know?
Yeah, that's for sure. That's so true. I think as well, just listening to you there, if you actually could design your own PhD, because I know you've done the PhD, right?
Yeah.
But now I'm interested to know, if you actually could design your own one, what would it be focused on? Because we've jumped around, but how do you marry it all together?
Well, so very interesting you said that. So when I found recovery and I got back into the normal world, I was struggling to navigate the social world because I was 15 years in the depths of addiction and I was just a little bit odd in that reality. So I began designing a program that I called A Program for Life, and I was collecting tools, tactics, strategies, life experiences, and I put them into a program for myself. But then I started speaking about these in schools. But I've since gone on now. It's called A Program for Life. I deliver to the corporate world, and I went up and delivered it in
I honestly didn't know about that when I asked that question.
It's funny when you asked. So I've delivered it in schools and companies and stuff like that as well. And I've sort of formulated, because you need it in a certain package. So it's a 6-module package. And the first one is about the human condition, the challenges we all face. So it's really about how we are naturally anxious, stressed, and our minds are, if you go to Buddhism, it calls it dukkha, it's suffering, life is suffering. So we're naturally attuned to negativity, suffering, anxiety, and all of these things. So it's giving people sort of an insight into that. So don't beat yourself up. The second one is breaking free from those limiting beliefs, that negative self-talk, how we can become more aware of that. Then it's the mind-body connect. I go into the mind-body connect of how they sort of speak to each other, the body and the mind, and stress and negative self-talk and all. Then it's about values, then it's about purpose, and then the sixth module is wrapping it all together. It's habits, behaviour change, taking action, because nothing changes. I
love that's the 6th module.
Yeah, it had to be.
You've built the foundations up, and I think other people do it the reverse.
Yeah.
And then they fail at the behaviour change because they don't have the foundations like you just laid.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And I think a lot of people will resonate with that a lot, understanding that there's a transition between each of them modules, and even understanding the mind-body connection. Like if we don't understand that and we don't have some level of being able to drop into your own body. And I say that because I've only, in recent years learned how to do it and understand it's very hard then to change any behaviour if you can't do that.
Yeah.
If you can't fully have that awareness. That's amazing to hear that. That was something I really wanted to do when I first started to coach, just because I was a teacher, just to go into schools and deliver a module like that for transition year students. So if you're not from Ireland, there's a year we do when you're 15, 16, and it's an explorative year to find different things, not just academia. And I was I'd love to go in, because thinking of my own 16-year-old self, wow, was I not in touch with any of this stuff. It's amazing now people have access to all this. You didn't back then.
You didn't.
No. And even having that for people and understanding even the deeper rationale behind why you would bother with any of this. Imagine having that in your, you going out doing that work in schools.
Yeah. And I think what they really need to do, there's transition years are doing this in certain schools, but I think what really needs to happen, it needs to be brought into the curriculum. We need a change from a governmental level where you have history, geography, maths, English, personal development, whatever it is, you get graded on it. You have teachers that specifically teach this. It's part of the curriculum. Because I think there's a challenge at schools at the minute where teachers are to do a mindfulness session with kids. They mightn't even be bought into the idea of mindfulness, never mind trained in it.
That's a huge part.
And again, I often think of my stepdaughter was going through, I was helping her remember the mountains of Ireland and the rivers of England, and I'm saying she can just Google this in the future. She should be taught how to communicate, how to be happy. Happiness is a skill. Teach people how to be happy, how to regulate your emotions. That's what I was going into. There was a desk school in Tallaght, and I had them for 2 years, a group of 10. And that's what we were talking about, how to regulate your emotions, how to be happy, how to think about what pulls you in the direction you want to go, what's pulling you off course, basic needs, these core skills that we need to develop.
It's so funny, at home we talk a lot about the basic needs and how a lot of people bypass their basic needs because they're not able to be present enough to even understand that.
Yeah.
And that's in school, when I look back, it's actually incredible how much focus was put on the academia side of things. I was in an all-girls secondary school, and we'd so little connection. And the fact it was an all-girls school as well, we'd such a abnormal thought about men as well, because it's just all women in the school.
Yeah.
So there's so much things going on. And when I thought like, okay, there was men like the other side of the wall in the lads' school. Then there was us in the girls' school. We were highly focused on academia. The lads seemed to be more focused on just like having the crack, rugby. And it was already like setting us up for this like really weird...
It's mad when you
really
think about
weird
it.
situation where we were like, we knew everything about history, knew everything about geography, maths, and then like...
Nothing about life.
Nothing about life. Not a thing about life. We actually went to college. I remember the first year of college, and me and the girls were just like totally overwhelmed. Like we're living with lads. Whereas like that alone is just so mind blowing. Yeah. And then even understanding, I always say this now, I wish I had a course in school that was like how to, understand how to talk to a mechanic so you don't get ripped off all the time.
That's it. Better knowledge than knowing where there's an esker in a glacier. You know what I mean?
I was like, that'd be handy.
Yeah.
Or even understanding like simple aspects of metabolic health. Like understanding, okay, so you are a person that's starting from scratch. What are the 3 main things you should really put a focus on to optimize your metabolic health? Just simple shit.
Simple as that.
Yeah. And that's it. Like even if a person, and even now I work with people in their 30s to 80s and still don't have a basic grasp of like how to balance the blood sugars because the brain's so diluted from all the different things they see online.
Yeah.
So it's like going back to that. Imagine you had that belief when you were in your teenage years. Great, now we can build it now no matter what age you are. But imagine you had it earlier.
And the challenge is that all of this information is there, but it's still not being implemented at that system level with government and stuff like that. And I know it's more difficult to measure. Like it's easy to measure a maths test to get 86%, but just because it's hard doesn't mean we don't need to do it. Like, you know what I mean? That's 100%. The reality of it. Yeah.
And that's it. I always think this, right? So at the beginning when I started coaching, I was like, right, the simplest way to track a woman with weight loss is to just calorie count. But that wasn't my core values. It also wasn't how I've done things myself when I lost weight. So I was like, right, I'm going to have to find a messier solution to this, but that's long term and that, it's a lot more work for me, but it's going to benefit this person a lot more. That's the school system.
Yeah. That it is. That is exactly it. I love that analogy, and I think another challenge we're facing now as well, like with the rise of technology and stuff like that, like our attention spans are just not there, and we're more than ever looking for the quick fix.
Yeah.
So we're fighting that as well at the same time, where like the answers are simple, but to get there can be complicated and messy, but you have to get through the complicated and the messy sometimes. We need to do.
That's true. Yeah. So true. And I think as well, if you said a quote to me earlier on that like really struck me, right? Because I'm in that headspace and things have happened before this that's really resonated with me. When you're in a classroom with loads of kids, things will resonate with some and other children will be completely cut off from it. And that's the thing. And that's what I found the most difficult when I was a teacher. I taught PE, so physical education, maths and geography, right? Some days you can see immediately from an expression who's taking it in, who's interested, who's engaged, who's not. That's like bringing in that level of curriculum, or even working with adults and you're the person. And that's why coaching is so much easier than teaching, because when you're coaching, the person usually wants to be there.
Yeah.
So it's like the analogy, bringing the horse to water. Like you can only bring the horse to water, you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, the combination of things to find. And you'll know this, growing up in Ireland when you had to learn Irish in school and it was through poems that we had absolutely no interest in. It was monotonous. We didn't learn Cora, like we didn't learn the conversation properly because it was just like a really poorly designed curriculum to learn Irish. I love the language. So I found other ways to learn it. Now I go on Duolingo, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's like that, trying to anyone find the right sweet spot for teaching to a group. There has to be an engaging curriculum, age appropriate. I'm going off on a teacher tangent now, but I can understand all the obstacles to it. Yeah. But there has to be that push through.
Engagement is key. And one thing I do, whether I'm teaching in Trinity, whether I'm going into the schools, whether I'm doing a keynote talk, I'll tell stories.
It's all about the storytelling.
We are hardwired for stories. It is all about the storytelling. And it's funny what you call it. I don't want to be blowing my own trumpet, but there's a woman I work with, Jacqueline Coyne. She was actually the one that introduced me first to Gabor Mate.
Okay.
And I done a talk in her kids' school just by a pure fluke. He came home one day and I'm doing a bit of work with Jacqueline and he came home and he says, this guy in the class, I came into the school, done a great talk. She says, what's his name? And he says, Brian Pennie. He says, oh God, I was only working with him like last week. And she was only said this to me the other day. She was talking to her son and says, like, how can we help kids and stuff? And he says, oh, do you know that guy that you know? Says that inspirational talk. But the kids really resonated with that. And he still, so there was nothing different about what I'd done in terms of the techniques and the strategy, but it was about 25 minutes of telling them stories. It was hopefully entertaining. They remembered it. And that is the key to getting messages across sometimes.
I think you're hitting something important there. The person that delivers it. So I always think of this, you know, when you go to mass and some priests you can't listen to, some you can, right? Your energy is very easy to listen to. Your backstory is extremely engaging. There's multiple reasons why I would listen to you over multiple other people, you know? And that's what's important to realize. You can give the curriculum, but the spin the individual puts in it is very different. So like, I always think this, I'd actually love to go to up the top of a church or into a school and talk, because I understand we need storytelling. We need it to be age appropriate. We need to create some level of entertainment to keep engagement going. And when you know them components, it's much easier to like engage someone or make change.
Yeah.
But like that, I can imagine that boy would be buzzing because he was like, oh my God, like I really found that so interesting, every element of it. It's like finding that for change. We're totally gone off on a tangent now.
Totally.
But completely. I was just like, listen to myself there like, oh my God, where are you gone? But I'm just really interested in working with teenagers because I did it for so long.
Yeah.
And I just think even now when you speak to clients and their kids aren't sleeping well, and I'm like, oh my God, thinking how the system and how, you know, teenagers should be going to school later each morning. They need to sleep in more. And, you know, it's just interesting to talk about as we change, as we get older, how we learn differently.
Yeah, they're a tricky bunch though.
They're a tricky bunch. Yeah, I'm like bracing myself for 10 years' time when I have two teenagers. Honestly.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, even that school I taught in England like taught me so much because it was like the equivalent of a DESH school in Ireland. DESH school in Ireland would be a school that's given extra resources because some of the children might be disadvantaged for some reason. And that school had 2,000 kids in it. And majority of them would have come from very little money at home. You know, a lot of the parents I would have spoke to would have addiction issues and just like
violence.
A lot of violence in the house, a lot of that. And they're coming into the school and they're expected to have any level of attention span with having a lot of them as well. They'd be living in stepdad's couch or they'd be going from one parent's house to the other parent's house and they were getting like really fragmented sleep. So like their ability, and plus they're in there at 7:30 in the morning. Their ability to concentrate was like zero.
Yeah. Impossible. Absolutely. They're hungry, angry,
yeah. And their
disconnected.
Food all they ate as well was crisps or bars, like because there was no one prepping their lunch.
Yeah.
It's absolutely wild. Look at that. Look at the circumstances of someone that's able to take in things and make changes, right? They're improving their sleep. Doesn't need to be perfect, but it's improving. Like for me, I found the sweet spot with sleep for me. I found ashwagandha works really well for me. Magnesium bisglycinate works really well for me. Lots of time outdoors works well for me. I find it very difficult to sit down. I have a standing desk. I get out as much as I can during the day. I understand that what really puts me to sleep is when I read and journal. I like a good brain dump before bed. I understand all the factors that really destroy my sleep. Screen time really messes my head up. I overthink about anything I consume. I really understand my sleep landscape, right? If I was wrecked, if I was eating shite, blah, 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 I wouldn't be able to get to the point where I had any of that awareness.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, like a person, you don't need to beat yourself up if you're not in the position to learn or integrate things or move forward. There's a chapter for everything. And just like that, when people say January has to be the time I make changes, that's like, hold on a second. Is your loved one after passing away? You know, how's your mental health? You have to wait for the season almost sometimes. Like now is not always the time. Now might be the time for you to learn the skill of rest.
Yeah. And it'll all come back in different stages in your life as well. And it's just, I think we come back to it again and again. And I think one of the greatest skills that I brought to my own life was like an ability to self-observe how I'm feeling, how I'm thinking, bodily sensations.
Yeah.
And then that can be the awareness that sort of drives the actions because they're not always the same. And I've noticed over time, like I've sort of changed some strategies, changed some tactics, the ones I used to preach. And I obviously used to feel, oh God, like what was that BS that I was talking about years ago? That I don't do that morning routine anymore. It's a different one now.
Yeah.
No, it's an evolution over time and we're constantly evolving. And I think that's really important for people. But it's back to those baby steps, being kind to yourself, take baby steps, but keep going, try to persevere, and you will get there. Hang in for long enough that something will actually stick.
I think you hit it in a really good point there as well. You know, when you follow like multiple people online, or you know people that are doing things that work for them, you have to remember that's working for them in this chapter.
Yeah.
Like a few years ago, I was like mad into other things that were benefiting my health at the time, but now they don't serve me at the moment.
Yeah.
Like, you know, my life has changed. I have kids now. It's a very different landscape. It's very interesting when you look at it from that lens, that like you might be on social media for 20 years, right? But Brian has evolved and now does very different things. Doesn't mean the old things didn't serve him at the time, but now they don't serve him anymore. And just understanding that everything is like changeable. And I think people don't get that. Like you'll see, okay, the extreme version, a guy writes a book on the carnivore diet and then he goes vegan. Right, you can you can see the extreme version, but like wasn't serving him anymore. So he's flipped tactic, right? He's flipped completely,
very big completely flip. Yeah.
But that's actually the truth. I actually heard that. Yeah. And but that's the thing, knowing that things change, like different seasons, things change.
Yeah, and your life circumstances as well, like what you call it. I often think of like I done a PhD and I wrote a book before I met my partner. If I met my partner a year into recovery and I'm living the life, I wouldn't have been able to do a PhD or writing a book.
Yeah.
The situation was perfectly set for me. I had great foundations for my own family, my mum and dad, my brothers and sisters to support me in early recovery. I had this abundant amount of time. I joke about it, but I kind of switched addictions from heroin into education.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it was the perfect scene for me to go on that journey.
Yeah.
So I got very lucky. I'm very grateful for that. So different contexts, different situations, like not everything is possible for everybody at different times as well. So taking that into account.
That's so interesting. It was the very same when I separated from the twins' dad. I was able to set up a business. I no longer was tied into our mortgage.
Yeah.
I didn't have my teaching job anymore. I was back in Ireland around my family. The circumstances were like optimal for me to start a business. Whereas they wouldn't have been at all before that. So it was like, wow, if I tried to start that business previous to that, would have been very difficult.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And as well, my perspective had changed so much where I went from thinking that I was going to be like a stay-at-home mother, depending on someone else's finances, to completely dependent on my own finances. So the fire was in my belly to make the business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It wouldn't have been in my belly before that. So it's really interesting how, like you say, the circumstances in my mind at the time were absolutely shocking. I was like, Jesus, this is not enjoyable at all. But then how that served me so much retrospectively. And I think a lot of the things, when things happen that aren't ideal, there's always a learning thing out of it or some benefit in it.
Yeah, but they're there if you look for them.
They're there if you look for them, exactly.
Yeah.
We had a question I really wanted to ask you about the placebo effect, because we kind of touched on it a little bit when we were speaking off air. But yeah, I'd love to hear more about that. I can't even remember how we came across the topic, but we were talking about
it was around belief, but I think the placebo effect is so potent, and I think a great way of looking at this, like the placebo effect isn't just some woo-hoo kind of a belief kind of perspective. Like belief is so important, I think, on the back of looking at the placebo effect.
Yeah.
Because if you give someone, let's say a randomized control trial, you have a study, let's say it's for ulcers, and you give someone the actual drug that helps with ulcers. If you give someone a sugar pill that's the placebo tablet, and you give them that drug, but that placebo, but they believe they're getting medication to help with ulcers, the body, through belief, the body actually makes changes and can create the enzymes and the molecules to fight that ulcer. Like it changes your biology. And that is the power of the placebo effect. Now, some people take this too far. There's some big names out there that talk about changing their bodies through visualization, like repairing their bodies through visualization.
Yeah.
I don't buy into that completely. Maybe there's an element of truth into it, but minimal. Like I don't. Some crazy stories out there. But if your belief, and it can't be fake belief, you can't fake this belief. That's why the placebo effect is so powerful. And that's why delusion is so powerful as well, because you're so deluded you actually believe it, you know?
I love that trend. For a while, people were like, I'm Delulu. They were like, I'm just delusional. I was like, there's so much power to delusion.
Oh, there's so much power. There really is. But that's what the placebo effect is from that biological perspective. But if you believe you can do it, I think I'll throw another quote. It's one of my favourite quotes. It's Henry Ford's, is it? If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And it's such a powerful quote. I can't do it. I'll never amount to anything. I'm not good enough. Yeah, you're right. because of your beliefs.
Yeah, fact.
If you
Because
think-
you'll act in line with that.
You'll act in line with that self-fulfilling prophecy, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the placebo effect really comes in. And there's a nocebo as well. Actually, why is that?
Yeah. I don't know if it's this or not, but I think I heard this recently where even if you know it's a sugar pill and it's fake and it's not the medication, it still is effective as the
Right.
placebo effect. So you can
Wow.
actually know that is not medication, that is not going to work. And
And it
there's
still
still
has an
studies to
impact.
show it has an impact.
And this messes up science so much because for years they couldn't realise they were getting like null effects from experiments and stuff like that. Saying, what's going on here? This is actually it's very obvious this is making biological changes.
Yeah.
But the placebo effect was so powerful that they had to sort of equate that into the statistical analysis and stuff like that as well. It threw them off so much.
It's absolutely wild. And then you go to looking at medicine and how when you prescribe somebody medication, obviously there's other factors, the time of the day they take it and all that, but probably belief is actually a huge part of its effectiveness as well. And like, for example, the hype of Ozempic.
Yeah.
Okay. People are like, damn, I take this and I'm
Great
going to get
example.
skinny. You know, and there's huge, powerful belief in society now of how powerful that drug is.
Yeah.
Imagine everyone online was like, oh, Ozempic doesn't really work. People are taking it, but there's just loads of side effects. You still stay fat.
Yeah.
Be a very different outcome.
Very different outcome. Cultural placebo.
And look at celebrities as well.
Yeah.
They're flying the flag for it because a lot of them are taking Ozempic and people are like, wow, you know, if they're taking it, it's good enough for them, it's good enough for
Not
me.
to mention my farmer are probably paying them. That's
Yeah. We get on our tin hats in a minute now. I'm ready for it. I have lots of things to say. But that's the thing. It's so like that societal thing. We can't extract that. Like you can't extrapolate in studies. You can't take that out, that element of it.
Yeah.
And we forget that there's a lot to be said for how we believe and perceive.
And it's the mind-body connect. It's literally your mind changing your body, and not just like you obviously move your arm,
Yeah.
but it changes the molecular
Yes.
aspects of your body. Like that's crazy when you think about that.
And even that study of people put a cast on, I don't know, for a few weeks, and every day one of the group visualized that the wrist was getting stronger every day, and the other didn't, whatever. But it just showed in the study that they did have more flexibility and strength in their wrist because they were visualizing it every day.
Yeah.
That's the power of it. And it just came to me there how much control we have and how probably a lot of things have happened in our life where we strongly believed it. Like Dad and me the other day he was saying to me, look, I looked up, there's not much evidence to say that fasting is going to really help with cancer, whatever, okay? Anyway, in my head I was like, right, I think there actually is a lot of research, but anyway, I have to look at that again. But the other side of it is I strongly believe in fasting in terms of how I feel with energy. I know about cellular repair. I understand and don't totally buy into fasting. So how much fasting might work in my body might actually be more
About the belief.
than the belief.
Yeah.
Okay. So I actually my body might be fucking thriving now because I'm like, oh my God, every hour I do an extra fasting is cellular repair. I'm getting healthier by the minute. It's burning body fat. That might actually be my truth.
Yeah.
Because the belief is so strong. Then another person might do it like my dad and see absolutely no benefits. He'd be like, I'm wrecked. He's not doing anything. And as well, the other side of it, his behaviour in terms of eating might change as well.
Yeah.
So
what's the point? That's it. Like, what's the point?
Yeah. So there's so many things with any behaviour of how much you buy into it. Like I have one exercise I do with a lot of clients and we look at the 7 layers of why. So you want to lose weight, Brian, why? Oh, I want to look good in clothes, why? So you go down to the deeper depths of the level.
Yeah.
And it's funny, some people found the power of that when we do it together as a collective group online. They're like, oh my God, I just hit like my deepest belief. I never, like total aha moment. Other people are like, oh yeah, still want to do it to look good in clothes.
Yeah.
Do you know, so it's just different. Like everyone's so different in how they...
We're so different, and I think that's the big thing. That's why we need to think of that personalized toolbook for ourselves, playbook for ourselves, because we are all so different. It's off the charts.
It's off the charts, and everyone's going to have a different blueprint, and you can't take anyone else's test. Like, you can't. Nobody else can give you the answers to the test.
You can get little seeds from people. You can get little techniques from people, but you've got to put it together yourself.
Yeah, you do. You have to put it, and that's like the boring work. I have so many other questions, but I didn't even put on the timer. I don't even know how long we're in. We could be talking 10 minutes. Could be talking an hour. I don't know. I have no idea. But yeah, I actually wanted to ask, to end, right? and I think you've already touched on this, but I'm really interested in your book choices because we didn't even touch into the trauma side of things, which maybe another day.
Yeah, well up for that.
Yeah, but books that have changed your life and that you found like really instrumental.
Wow, books that have changed my life, right? So to be from a spiritual perspective, right? There's 3 books. I'll give the 3. But they're so fundamentally bigger than any other. I've read like hundreds of spiritual books, but these were the 3 big ones for me. Number 1, and I read this once a year. I didn't read it last year actually, so I have to watch what I'm saying there. But Awareness by Anthony DeMello.
Okay.
Like we've talked about awareness so much. He basically challenges you on what awareness really is. He says that some people, they wake up asleep, they go to school in their sleep, they work in their sleep, they get married in their sleep, and they die asleep because there's no awareness in their lives. So he really hits you hard on that, and it's a beautiful and brilliant book. And The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, really getting you. That gave me the insight that self-observation was the most important skill that I had to sort of implement in my own life. Yeah. And then the third one is Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Brilliant book that taps into a little bit of everything, but it's a lovely book. So they be 3 seminal books. I was very spiritual in my earlier recovery days. They were monsters. When I start getting into sort of belief and tactics and tools, the one biggest book was a book by Tim Ferriss called Tribe of Mentors. And it was basically, he interviewed 130 of the world's most successful people in different disciplines because he needed a tribe of mentors to mentor him. And he asked them different questions, the same 13 questions to all the different people. Brilliant book. But I remember reading that book saying, I want a tribe of my own. So I Googled the 25 most influential women in Ireland, 25 most influential men, based on where they worked. Like, let's say Carolyn Lennon was working with the CEO of Air, Carolyn Lennon at Air.ie, C. Lennon at Air.ie. So I guessed their emails based on where they worked. I create an army of customers, friends, mentors. I meet some of them regularly today. Like, I interviewed Amy Huberman, Dara O'Brien. I met some cool people on that journey, but that was mental. My own tribe of mentors.
How unbelievable is that?
So that book had a huge impact on my life.
So you made your own tribe, like?
Made my own tribe.
They're still standing.
You're going to be jealous of this, right? So one of my tribe actually, brilliant family and guy. His name is Mick Slane. He had a company called LED Group, Robus. So Mick's great fella, great success in life, and as a gift for something I did for him at Christmas, he got me one of those proper ice baths. Like,
oh, stop! Did he?
So, yeah, Troy, that had a huge, very concrete impact in my life. So big shout out to the Slanes. Great family. He's such a good friend. He's a really close friend today.
It just shows, like, shoot your shot. Yeah. You've nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose.
I actually a friend of mine, so I'm obviously a coach, but he set up like a free mastermind because he's connected with loads of business owners. So like, he's a really successful marketing agency. There was other guys in the furniture business. There was another girl in like secret shopper business, but they were all on their A game. Yeah. Like these people. And we did a mastermind, just like a weekly call for a few months. I've never learned so much, and I've paid a lot for mentorships in the past. That was what I learned the most from the free mastermind, from learning from people top of their game.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And I'm dying to bring a mentorship together of people that are in all different areas, and you're learning from each other. Even what I learned from the way they deal with setbacks, the way they think, was just invaluable. And I'm sure you're the same. Like, it's totally changed everything for you.
It was. And that the idea for me at the time was actually asking them questions so I could get help from people further along the path. And some of them are insights. Like, one of the insights, one of them, Julie Cinnamon, she was the CEO of Enterprise Ireland at the time. And her biggest thing was, she says, what you're going to do, would you still do it if it was on the headlines of the Irish Times the following day? And that's something that jumps into my mind all the time, right? So am I being authentically me, or am I doing it for some other purpose? Yeah. Would I still do it if the world was watching? Yes. I think that's a lovely technique and tool.
Very good to stay authentic as well.
Stay authentic and real as well.
Because that's what I think about. Now one of the things I always say to myself, are you walking the walk? What you're saying on social media, are you walking that walk?
That's important, because a lot aren't.
I would be gone off social media if I'm ever not doing that, because then you go into this disingenuous territory and you actually can't coach well if you're not doing it yourself. I really believe that.
People feel it. They smell that BS.
do.
We're great BS detectors.
Yes.
They mightn't at the start, but they will over
Yeah.
time. And I think you get away with it a bit more on social media because you're not in their company. Like
Yes.
a great bit of advice I got off a mentor one time is life is a contact sport. That means be in their presence, shake their hands, get the rub of people in that. And that's what you need to do, you know.
There's so much to be said for on a day-to-day basis when you're meeting strangers. To have a chat to a stranger every day you can. And I'm a strong believer in that. Not only do you learn about yourself and your own mannerisms, you learn off someone else. The more contact you can have with different people, the better.
Yeah.
Like you just learn so much from them encounters, but we don't have that anymore.
No, that's the problem.
And I think it's actually dangerous territory because as well, like in society, it's like, oh, don't talk to strangers.
Yeah.
But obviously if it's someone that you perceive as fairly safe, you learn so much.
So much. I love, I do it a lot.
Airplane chats.
Airplane chats. I do one more with older people. If I see older people, because it's a double win because they're wise, they have all the years, and then you're being nice as well.
And they love it.
They love it.
They miss it.
Great chats with people
Great
like that.
chats.
I love it.
Yeah.
And it's kindness comes into it, gratitude comes into it, so much comes into it.
Yes, yeah. And as well, you'll notice they have the art of small talk down to a T because they've done it so much in their life.
Yeah.
So they could have an easy conversation that's just an easy one. It's nice. It's pleasant because they have that skill from years of repetitions. So and they're hungry for it and they're missing it.
Yeah.
And then a person that's younger that might be in their 20s, as far as I can see,
phone.
Yeah, they're just not as developed. I can't explain to you the amount of people. So I have a big, large double pram I push with the twins in it. They're nearly grown out of it now. The amount of people that nearly trip over the pram because they're looking at their phone.
And their phones.
I'm like, hello, this is a massive jalopy of a thing. Like, look up. It's absolutely bananas.
Well, I tell you the only other industry that calls their customers users besides the drug industry.
Oh, yeah.
The technological industry.
Jeez. Isn't that mad?
Users.
But the tactics now, look at the cigarette tactics of buying a box of fags 20 years ago. Amateurs. Look at the tactics now, even with Cocomelon, you know, the kids program, right?
Yeah.
I saw a documentary on that and my job was on the floor of all the things they employ
The
to keep the attention of the baby.
Yeah.
The baby.
The baby.
It's absolutely like...
It should be illegal.
100%. 100%. But then you have to, and I said this earlier on today, buyer beware. Like you have to be so mindful that a lot of things out there, even if they're perceived as normal, okay, healthy, are not.
Yeah.
They are not. Like we said, the bars in the shop, casually using social media, all these things that are perceived as grand.
Don't know.
Because, if everyone's doing it, it's grand, isn't it? No.
I'm the opposite. You've got to be different because if you're normal, you're in the rat race. The people in the rat race are not doing good. So if someone calls me a bit weird, me stepdaughter's off, say, you're weird. I said, thanks.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah, that's what I want. Yeah.
Go against the grain.
Gives me a shout. Gives me a chance.
It's so true though.
Yeah.
Going against the grain is so important in so many aspects.
Yeah.
Like how you curate your life it has to be, you have to be doing that. Like you can read as much as you want and you can do all these different things, but like you have to understand your values, your authentic self, all that has to come into play.
Yeah.
I could honestly talk to you the whole day. I'm not joking. I really enjoyed that.
There's 2 more book recommendations. Can I give them?
Go on,
we chatted about one, right? The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. That was something that really reinforced me belief of the power of belief.
Yeah.
But the most recent book that was really powerful in my life was a book called The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter.
Okay.
Powerful book. And it's not just a self-help book, because I did go a little bit off self-help books. I'm more into stories now. But it's his story of going up to Alaska and he goes hunting for the first time. Now, I wouldn't be pro-hunting or anything like that, but it gives you a different perspective on it as well. But he spent so much time in the discomfort of the Alaskan wild, freezing cold, hungry. Like we've come to think that hunger is such a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like we were hungry for millennia, like, you know what I mean? It was we survived, like, you know. And he just gives an insight that we're living in a crisis of comfort. Now, I've got a new car recently that has a heated steering wheel, and I love me heated steering wheel in the mornings, but I don't need me heated steering wheel, you know.
You should have said that. You impressed me, Bubba.
Great book, Comfort Crisis.
That's unreal.
Super.
It's very interesting as well how we perceive hunger.
Yeah.
Just when you said that, I was like, God, we see it so negative.
So
and
negative.
like, oh my God.
It's okay to be hungry.
Yeah, it's okay to be hungry. And think about it, like 100 years ago, of course you're going to go days really hungry.
Yeah.
The body is made for prolonged periods of that.
And what happens when you're hungry? People think, I've no energy. No, from an evolutionary perspective, you need more energy to survive because you need to be hyper vigilant to get your food. So all of a sudden it increases your energy.
I'll tell you what happens, right? When you go into, I did a 4-day water fast before, right? The first day is fine. The first 24 hours, you feel okay, like you're hungry.
Yeah.
Between 24 and 48 hours, I always feel, oh my God, this is horrendous.
Yeah.
Your mood drops. You're dying for food. You just feel like the dopamine hit you normally get from meal times isn't there, and it feels bleak. That's the word I can describe it. Bleak. When you get past 48 hours, something different happens.
Wow.
Your energy comes up, your focus happens, you're flying. Like anything above 48 hours, like you're like cruising.
Yeah.
But that time between 24 to 48, there's obviously an evolutionary reason for it, that it's so insanely unenjoyable. Like I would find it very hard to do that fast if I'm with the kids preparing their meal times. I only do it the times I'm gone away from them. Like at the summer I went to Spain for 3 days. I did it then.
Yeah.
Much easier. I'm not preparing food.
They wouldn't do well.
They wouldn't do well. But I also wouldn't do well. Because minding kids when you're doing prolonged fasts, you just don't have the energy in that day or two, and it's just not fair to them.
Yeah.
Like unless I suppose if I got really good at fasting, I probably would be able to do it. But I don't do it when I'm with the twins. Like I wouldn't do a prolonged one.
Yeah.
But again, everyone's different.
It's me. I'm going to take that away for 2025. I'm going to 3-day fast.
Yeah, 3-day water fast. Build up to it. Otherwise, and expect that lull. It's a lull of just been like...
Yeah, the bleakness.
Because you actually have so much more time in your day when you're not prepping and eating food. Wild.
Wow.
So there's a lot of periods of the day you're just like, oh.
I spend a lot of time prepping food actually, so I find it very therapeutic actually.
So do I. I see, that's it. And I love I'm always like making different things for the kids, and it's a big part of the day actually.
Yeah.
You know, especially I work from home.
It's great. It's a ritualistic.
It's a ritual. And that's it. There's so much joy from food, and it actually heightens my sense of pleasure and joy from food. I appreciate the food more than when I do break the fast. And as well, when you fast regularly, you don't end up gorging anymore. I did initially. I ended up like way overeating when I'd break the fast because my body wasn't used to that.
Yeah.
So it's just like getting used to in the flow of it.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. Come here, where can people find you?
Where can people find me? The best place to find me. So the documentary will be coming out April, May 2025. So it's a 3-part documentary. That'd be cool. It's on
What's it called?
RT. It's called The Science of Addiction or Hooked, where RT are sort of still working on the title.
Hooked.
Yeah, it's
cool.
Hooked. It'll be on RT 1 after 9 o'clock now. So primetime slot should be out there.
Really looking forward to that.
If anyone's looking for me specifically, best place is for everything is my website. It's brianpennie.com, and then Instagram
it's
and link.
Pennie.
Pennie, yes.
Yeah.
I should say that to people actually more often.
I'd always be putting in a Y.
Yeah. And then Instagram is Brian Pennie, and LinkedIn. They're the 2 social media.
Yeah, absolute gentleman. I really appreciate you
absolute
coming.
pleasure.
Thank you so
Love
much.
the conversation.
Yeah, we'll chat soon again. Thank you.
Deadly.